Oh hey, this is Trav. Today I'm going to show you how to make buttons out of antler. Here's an old broken elk antler, and here's a mule deer antler. So let's go ahead and get started. So ever since my grandma had this big button tin, I've always thought buttons were pretty cool. Here's a Campbell's soup can container I got at a thrift store, and I keep my buttons in. Dump these out and sort through them. I've made some antler buttons in the past, and this is what we're going to be making today. I think these are really cool. All different shapes and sizes, from the points to cross section. These can be sewn onto clothing or bags or anything, even onto a knife scabbard. Well, you might be thinking, what are you doing? You're cutting up those antlers that could be hung on your wall. Well, that's great, but you can only have so many antlers on your wall. Why not use them for something that's both beautiful and functional? In this case, an elk antler and a mule deer antler. I think it's neat to cut these up. I've seen the Cub Scouts take an antler before and cut pieces, drill a hole down through them, and use it as a neckerchief slide. I've seen antlers used, well, you can find them in pet stores. People give them to their dogs for chew toys. But I've found that buttons are a pretty neat way to use your antler. And I don't know, there's something about the rugged aesthetics of a deer or an elk antler. I've tried it with pronghorn horn, but it's almost like plastic. It's weird. It doesn't have the strength that an actual antler button has, because pronghorn are horn material. It's just not quite as strong. The antler buttons, though, will provide you years of quality service. So we're going to take this elk antler, and I'm going to use a hacksaw. If you have nothing more than a hacksaw, you can still make buttons just fine. I'm going to go ahead and lock this into a vise. And we're going to take the point off of this antler, and you can make it as long as you want depending on what you're going to be using it for. I'm just going to go about 1.25 inches in length, and I'm going to tighten up this vise and just go ahead and saw the end of this antler point right off. Okay, here it is. And you'll notice it's not cut off perfectly straight. And that's okay, it gives it some character. Now, I'll take a sanding block like this, and we can just touch that up around the edges, so it's not sharp and doesn't catch on anything. Just kind of smooth up the edge of that antler all the way around. That is great. So now we're going to drill a couple of holes in this antler point button. And your drill bit size can be determined by whatever you're using for lacing, whether it's thread or leather lacing, whatever it might be. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just put 2 holes in this button. So I'm going to lock it in the vise again. And let's just put 2 holes right here. Now a second hole right next to it. Oops, that's wanting to move on me. We'll flip that point around. I'm going to put a hole right there next to the first one. Okay. Take a look at that. A couple of holes drilled in that antler point. You've got a dark side and a light side. Look how nice that looks, the center of it there. If you want, you can just touch up around those holes where the drill bit passed through. And just like that, we've got an antler button ready to go. Now let's do a cross section antler button. Again, we'll use our elk antler. Let's just cut one off of here. And this time we're going to use the bandsaw. I'm going to cut several buttons off of this piece of the elk antler using this bandsaw. And I made them different thicknesses on purpose. Some of these are pretty thin, and a few of them made a little thicker. Just depending on, again, if you're working with leather, fabric, whatever material, you might want a thinner or a thicker button. So when I cut buttons, I don't try to make them all the same. In fact, each button's kind of like a snowflake. They're very individual. Each one is unique. Now, we can just lay these down, put a sanding block, and polish up the edges of them. Kind of smooth them out with that sandpaper. Maybe we'll put this one on a time lapse. Some of these you'll see have marks from the saw blade. See that? On this side. So I try to sand those out so you can just see the pure antler itself. I don't know if I can hold these with my fingers. We're going to give it a try, otherwise I'll put them in the vise. Start off with one of these thin buttons. It's hard to see against this table, but let's put a couple holes in this button. You could do 2 or 3 holes, again, depending what your application is going to be. I'm going to sink one right through here. And then one next to it, about there. Look at that, an antler button is born. Very nice. And if there's a little bit of material hung up in the holes, we come over here to our sanding block. Give that a once over. Cleans up very nicely. Okay, so here's a mule deer antler. It'll be exactly the same. It's just that you can use a 2-point, or in this case, a bigger buck. These eye guards make real nice buttons, and then cross sections. You can see how it's got knurling on there. Very unique buttons. You can even cut buttons off of the base. This one has a broken point on here. You can do anything you want with buttons, and there's how many could come off of one antler? One antler provided quite a few. So let's go ahead and make a couple more buttons with this mule deer antler. We'll go ahead and do our hacksaw method here for the first one. Just to show you, you don't need a bandsaw to make buttons. That one's got a little damage on the end, but it'll give it character. And again, the length is up to you. I'm going to go about right there. If I want, I can smooth the edges off of this while it's in the vise. Now that one's ready to go on that side. Here's the one we just cut. It's sharp on the edges. You can see it's kind of rough right there where it broke off. But with a sanding block, it'll make short work of that. Look at that, smooth as can be. Now we'll put a couple of holes in this mule deer antler button. Makes a difference when your battery is charged up. Take that out of the vise, and you can see where it's rough, where the bit has come through, and even on the side where it entered. I don't sand it too much because I don't want to take away the natural color, just enough to smooth it off. And there you go. Sometimes buttons you'll find have been chewed on in the woods by porcupines or squirrels. Gives them some added character. Look at that mule deer antler point button. We could make some real large buttons down in here, but for now, I just wanted to show you, see how narrow this point is, and the buttons will get wider. So if you were putting these on, say a leather coat or a possibles bag or something, and you wanted to have several buttons, you could take them all from the same antler point, so it'd be roughly the same size. But maybe you just want one real large button in the center. Take that out of the base of these antlers. Let's go ahead and make a larger button right now. We'll cut it right out of here. We'll do that on the bandsaw. Look how nice that button's going to be. It's pithy in the center of these antlers, and I find that elk antler is even more so than deer. This is a mule deer antler. So on this one, let's go ahead and put a couple of larger holes in this, possibly even 3 on this one. I'm going to change to a larger bit. I don't know if I can hold this with my hands without it spinning. First, let's touch up the edges. Smooth this out on both sides. That feels really good. Now let's put this in our vise. And let's put 3 holes in this one. Well, I'm going to stay with 2. I put those a little further apart just because I figure I'll be using a piece of leather lacing. It needs to fit through those holes. I don't want it to be too close together. If I want, I can just touch up either side of that. Look how nice that looks. A mule deer antler button. So my brother asked me how I got interested in antler buttons to begin with. A friend of mine is a knife maker, and so he helped me make my very first knife. And in fact, he gave me a knife before I finished my own. So I made a knife scabbard for his knife that he gave me. And I used an antler button because I made the knife scabbard such that it folded over and buttoned. It was made out of leather. And so where am I going to get an antler button? Well, I'll just make my own. And so I used one of these cross-section style antler buttons. So why not just use a regular button? Take a look at these from the store. I think I bought these at Walmart or Hobby Lobby, and they're great, and they're colorful, and there's all different kinds, and some of these are wood, and some of them look like wood, but I wanted antler. And I guess because it was a knife sheath that I use for hunting, I wanted the button to be from a deer antler. And so that's what I went with. But yes, I could have used a button like this, but something like that or something like this on a knife scabbard just didn't look right to me. I wanted it to be an actual antler button. And in this case, it was a cross-section one. There's a small one in here I really like. See that guy? That's just the same size as the one on the knife sheath that I made. And I really like the looks of that button. It's not perfectly round. It's not cookie cutter from the store with the holes exactly spaced. It's handmade and quality. So with a few basic tools and a little perseverance and elbow grease, you too can make some beautiful quality antler buttons. Thanks a bunch for watching this episode of Outdoors with Trav. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.